Wyrdren's Community and Relationships Manager, and we're back again with an interview with our creative director, Sally Shepard. How are you doing today, Sally?
I'm good, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, we're happy to have you back here. And so today we are going through a Q&A. You asked, we answered. These are all the questions you asked us on our social medias, mostly TikTok, but a few other spatterings in there. So with that said, let's just dive in, shall we?
Let's go.
What is your favorite thing about having creative control over your own game development?
I think the question almost answers itself. My favorite thing is having creative control. I think I'm exceptionally lucky in that we're an independent company and I get to decide a lot of things, the narrative, the art style, the way the game is shaping up. I have basically creative freedom, which is awesome. And I'm just really excited to keep working on the games, and obviously we'll bring out a second game at some point and hopefully have the same creative freedom for the second one.
Discussion does come up a lot these days of what is the benefit of indie, or even what is indie. And as you've said before, I think that it is in that creative control you maintain, basically.
Absolutely, not having an overlord to tell you that you have to take something out or leave something in or change direction is pretty awesome.
So, what kind of skills did you already have when you started working on the project?
So I think I've mentioned this before. I went to university for game arts, so I had a degree. I had used Unity before. I had used 3D modeling things before. This game itself is 2D, but I had used a lot of the software that's involved. So even having a base understanding of the software, those were the things I was coming in with. I had also made a vertical slice before, I had made demos before, I had been a concept artist in the industry before, so I had some of those skills to know the pipeline, to know kind of the processes, even just soft skills where I'd been a team leader and a manager in a retail store and in different jobs when I was younger, meant that I could come into this having already managed and run a team before. So just some of those soft skills like good communication, hopefully, are things that I already had when I came in.
That's awesome. It's interesting that you mentioned soft skills as well. I think a lot of people, one of the questions that we do get asked quite a lot is, how do I get into this industry? And it's interesting that soft skills are not as frequently mentioned as maybe we would like.
Yeah. Whenever I'm interviewing or looking at people for the company, I always look at soft skills as well as your technical skills. I think how you communicate, how you work as a team, even just stuff like how you plan and organize, how you look after yourself in your day-to-day working routine informs me a lot to how you'll work with the team and kind of what you'll be bringing. Are you hyper organized? Do you love data? Do you love, spreadsheets? That makes you a really good asset for this part of the business.
I could not agree more. Okay, great question. Which engine are you using?
So I know this is the big debate in game making. Is it Unity? Is it Unreal? We're Unity. I think for 2D games, especially 2D games like this, Unity is just way, way more intuitive and it works a lot better for us. I also had a background using Unity, so it was much easier for me to roll straight onto a project using Unity rather than start from scratch and have to teach myself Unreal. I think Unreal is a really great tool. Unreal 5 has just come out and it looks spectacular. I think there's a lot of uses for Unreal. I don't think it's for us right now. I think Unity works. Unity is easier to understand in some ways because it has a lot more, I think, resources. So Unity have their own kind of help desk, they have their own tutorials. I think there's a lot more accessibility in Unity, and that works well for me.
That's really interesting. It is a really hot topic, isn't it? Which is, what engine do you use? It's sort of like the console wars, basically. But it really does come down to what is the best tool for you and this project, which is, I think, maybe what people miss.
Absolutely. I also think it depends on how you learn how to code. It depends on what you're trying to do, because Unity is really good for certain types of games and Unreal is really good for other types of games. So it would be weird to kind of use the wrong tool almost. So I just think using the tool that is suited to the project you're working on is just so much easier than finding a load of workarounds.
I could not agree more, quite honestly. That's good to hear. By narrative driven with Spellbound, do you mean like a Telltale game or like a BioWare game? What does that mean?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question because what is narrative driven at the end of the day? And a lot of games tend to like label themselves as narrative driven, but we really are narrative driven. So we are a little bit, I guess, like a Telltale game where you are presented with choices and your choices shape the story. At the same time, we're maybe a little bit like a BioWare game in that your choices shape the ending. You can get a good, a bad, or a neutral ending depending on your choices throughout the game. So, a little bit like both is maybe my answer. We are a 2D game, so we're probably not as flashy as those games in terms of like gameplay and mechanics, but narratively, we are very kind of choose your own pathway, choose your own destiny. So, yeah, we are narrative driven, kind of like them, but kind of not.
I know what you mean. And at the end of the day, I think really what it comes down to is we're telling the stories of people. That's narrative. Is we're telling the story of people from their perspective. You're involved. You're enmeshed. There's choices to be made. So yeah, I feel you on the little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, mostly column C.
Yeah, so you, the player, it's from your point of view, and you get to make decisions that shape the game and shape the narrative. So, yeah, it's you making those choices. That's what we mean by narrative driven, is you are driving the game forward.
How did you manage, as we've talked about before, how did you manage to get into the industry? Feels like there's a lot of roadblocks, I think, for people.
Yeah, it's such an interesting industry because every person I've talked to tends to have like a different story about how they broke in. Mine, I guess, is a little uncommon only because I was in the industry after university doing freelance contracts as a concept artist. So, in terms of how I broke into the industry, I was just applying for jobs after university. I got some contracts. My contracts then kind of came through word of mouth or through like good references. And when the pandemic hit and my contract had finished, the way I got back into the industry was by making my own company, which I guess is like a weird way to get back into the industry. There are a lot of roadblocks. I absolutely agree with that. I think things are slowly changing and we're starting to remove some of those roadblocks, but there are still too many for my liking.
I cannot agree with you more on that. I think that's why we're so happy to be participating in programs like Limit Break's mentorship program. We're both members of that, and that's been really helpful. Just having someone to talk to, I think, is really helpful that understands.
Absolutely.
But I do agree with you about, because I get this question a lot myself, and the answer is, to quote my state's namesake, it's a little bit like landing in Oz. You just sort of bash your way in a little bit, and then you land and you find yourself finally there with no real idea of how you got there, basically.
Yeah, I think there are especially UK-based people who are watching and are trying to get into the industry. There are some really great programs. Limit Break is one of them. You've got Into Games, which is really great if you are at kind of college level and you're thinking about like trying to get into games and you want internships and kind of people to read over your CV or people to give you opportunities. They're really great. They have some good programs. There are some really, really great resources out there. I would say your best bet for any of these things is networking. Make sure you're following everybody on Twitter to see their updates, to see when they're doing stuff. They are always talking about the initiatives that they're a part of. Into Games are always posting. Women in Games are always posting. Code Coven are always posting. So follow these different kind of organizations that are there to help and support you, and they will show you the way.
And it really is, at the end of the day, a numbers game. It just comes down to applying to as many postings as you can, basically, and seeing which one sticks, unfortunately. But it's a great answer, though. Honestly, I think that will help a lot of people with, well, that age-old question, really. Will Spellbound be in any other languages?
Yes, hopefully. So right now I am the sole developer, so it's basically things move as fast as I can get to them. we're coming out in English first. Localization is a huge priority for me after we release in English. So one of the things I would love to do is eventually translate into multiple different languages. It's something we'll be looking at maybe after we come out on Switch and after we come out on Steam.
That's wonderful. Yeah, localization and porting are not afterthoughts, but it's just something that maybe people don't always think of when they think about releasing a game. It isn't the situation of you put something out there and you're done. A game lives forever, which means you have to maintain it forever and update it. What was the most difficult part you faced during development, and how did you overcome it?
I think for me, the most difficult part of development was being alone. I worked on Spellbound for just under a year on my own. I got to the point where I had a vertical slice, I had a demo, but I had programmed everything on my own. I had done all the art, I had done all the narrative, so it was just a team of me. And that can be quite lonely, and it's still predominantly me on the dev side, but now I have Annie. And so I'm not going insane being alone anymore. And it means that I get to, well, one of the great things about having Annie is I got to hand over a lot of the community tasks, which were responding on social media, keeping up with blog posts, making sure our schedule is correct, making sure we're attending the right things. So Annie is kind of a whiz at organizing my life for me now. And making sure that I'm doing the right thing and going to the right thing, and I am aware of things, and she keeps me like really on track now, which is lovely. Because when you're a solo dev, and this is just some advice for anybody who's thinking about solo deving, you kind of have to split your brain into 3 different parts, and you have to think about the business side, you have to think about the dev side, and you have to think about the community and the marketing. So I have managed now to like slice some of that up and hand over some of my brain to Annie and let her go for it.
And I'm happy to be doing it, honestly. I mean, so far it's just been an amazing journey, an amazing time, but it is a skill that I possess, organization and clarity. It comes from the background of being in production and project management. That image of the solo developer in their office in the dark, creating their masterpiece and then just releasing it, and then boom, it does well, is a myth. That doesn't happen. And it's a side of gaming that people don't like to think about: community, business, marketing. But it is part of gaming, and Absolutely. It's so important to think of. So that's wonderful to hear that you're handling it so well. So go you. How did you organize your daily tasks?
So when I was solo, when it was just me, I just used my own calendar. I'm kind of a bit old school. I love a pen and paper and a diary. And I like to duplicate things. I'm a little bit scatterbrained, so I tend to have like a paper calendar, a digital calendar, a diary, a notebook, and I'll make sure I have duplicate copies if I need to be somewhere or go somewhere or do a task. Make sure it's written in everything. And once Annie joined the team and we started having our morning meetings, we set up a Teams account in Microsoft Teams, and we've kind of used that to schedule, and we use that to plan out, and we have boards and we have little tasks and deadlines. We do a lot of labeling, we do a lot of color coding, we do a lot of like shifting things around to make sure it's in the done pile, and so that we can all easily see what tasks we have, when they need to be done by, and what's being done and what's done, which is very helpful. So I think all of the tools are quite helpful though. Trello is quite good, Teams is quite good. Whatever it takes for you to organize your life, find a tool that suits you. You don't have to use like the same stuff as anybody else. We definitely didn't. A lot of people use Slack. We opted for Teams because we find it easier to use and it's easier to communicate. But seriously, whether it's Discord, whether it's Facebook Messenger, whatever it is, if it's the tool that works for your team, that's the best tool for you.
Man, I do love a good Post-it. I really do. They're just amazing. But I feel you on the duplication. I do the same thing as well. I've integrated Wyrdren's calendar into my own calendar just so I have that extra notification of like, hey, this is happening. Hey, you need to do this. Did you have any other jobs, or did you work full-time on your game?
So I think I've told this story probably a million times now, but my freelance contract ended 4 days before the pandemic hit. and I didn't have another one lined up, so I went straight into full-time, straight into working on Spellbound, and I was lucky enough that I had some savings and that I had a little bit of cushion so that I could take that time to do that. And as of January, we're grant funded, so we've been able to pay everybody, which is amazing. Yeah, so I have been very fortunate that in the last year and a half, I haven't really had to take any other contracts or do anything else apart from this. I have been able to focus on this full time. I understand that's not the same for everybody. It might not be the same for me going forward. I have had a few little offers here and there, but Spellbound and Wyrdren will always be my main goal and my main focus, and I'm never going to do anything that takes away from that. But yeah, I do think there is something to be said about game devs that work while also producing their game. I find that incredible because I don't know how they compartmentalize and focus on the million different projects that they have going all at the same time.
No, I completely feel you on that. The many cons we've gone to, we're somewhat in the minority, I think, in terms of being full-time devs. Wyrdren is exclusively what we do. It's a full-time job. And then you meet other people who are like, no, we work somewhere else, but we've been working on this game together for 5 years in our garage. And you're just like, when do you sleep?
Yeah, I think we've been really lucky because we're obviously bringing out our first game under 2 years, which is not unheard of, but is a little bit rare in the industry to have a game come out so fast after, basically from its conception. It's under 2 years that it's going to be coming out, which is crazy and very fast. And our production time will be cut in half for the second game because we have the framework and the mechanics. So we're in quite an interesting position that I don't think we're all going to have to go find other jobs, which is great. We'll get to work on this and keep working on this. And that's awesome. I'm so excited about the future of Wyrdren.
Do you have any tools, software, or books that you want to recommend?
It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do concept art, anatomy, just study as much anatomy as you possibly can. Study fashion. I always think fashion is such an interesting part of character design because it informs you as to where that person lives, what type of person they are, what type of materials they have access to, their status, their wealth, their class. It gives you all of these different insights into how they live. If you're trying to study environments, do some master studies, look at old oil painters, how they captured light and form and texture, and then try and look at how that can work in a digital format or how you can shape that. I'm a big believer in you have to learn the rules first and then break them. So I will always advocate for master studies, anatomy studies, environment studies. I know those are really, really boring and really all of us just want to go get on with the cool sci-fi thing that we want to do, but studying from real life can be really, really useful in then applying that to fantasy. In terms of programming, if you're looking at trying to learn programming, there are lots and lots of tutorials. I can't even name how many tutorials I watched to teach myself programming and Unity and the many different skills I've had to pick up over the past year to run this business. Yeah, there are so many things out there. It can seem kind of overwhelming. I would say pick a thing that you a skill that you really want to learn and focus in on that first. Try and prioritize. So if your game is 2D, maybe you need to focus on art. Maybe if your game is really mechanics heavy, focus a little bit on programming, game design, level design. There are some really good game psychology books out there about how players think and how they interact with worlds. As you can maybe see behind me, I have a massive bookshelf. I just fill my day and my life with as many resources as possible. And there's no shame in where your resource comes from. If you don't want to read, watch a YouTube video. If you don't want to watch a YouTube video, listen to a podcast. There are some awesome podcasts out there. Big shout out to She Plays Games podcast. There are just so many resources out there. I'm constantly trying to learn, which is constantly exhausting, But if you love it and it's something that you want to learn and it's a skill, you will find the thing that works for you.
Learning the fundamentals is vital. And in my mind, it's kind of non-negotiable, because otherwise, how will you learn to do what you do well? Going back to day one of development, is there anything you would have done differently?
I'm not sure if there's anything I would have done differently, because it's such an interesting journey that Spellbound has been on. I think maybe there's some stuff I personally would have done differently in terms of like knowing about business things. There's like certain things I would have made sure that we had signed up for, or things that I would have like pushed us forward for sooner. But I think, again, when you first started a business, there's that little bit of imposter syndrome and a little bit of self-doubt. And I didn't think I was ready to put myself forward for a lot of things until I had like already completed like a full demo, a full virtual slice. And now afterwards, I'm learning that I didn't maybe have to be as far along before I started like asking for help and advice and talking to the industry and networking. I maybe could have started sooner. But that's maybe the only thing I would have done differently. A lot of it is like stuff that I would do differently about me. Because that's the only thing that I can control is me. But no, there isn't really anything I would have done differently, which is kind of cool because it means like no regrets.
Yeah, no regrets. Yeah, no, it's I think it's also, I know you mentioned this quite a lot, but I think it's really important to remember that you started this in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself made everything harder, made everything more impossible, made everything more difficult, not just for us, but like for everyone. So all the normal opportunities that you may have gone to if we hadn't been in a pandemic, they just didn't exist. And funding opportunities changed, and business changed, and gaming changed literally overnight. So I think it's amazing you've come as far as you have. Do you know when you'll be recruiting?
Any jobs we do have going will be advertised on our website at wyrdren.com, so please keep an eye out there. We also post on our social media if we have any roles going, so also keep an eye out there. If you're following us, it should just pop up in your timeline.
Yeah, and then just a shout out as well, our Discord channel will always be posting up. That's actually kind of the best place to go, just because then you can have a conversation with us in real time. So hopefully soon, one day. It is the thing that we get asked the most. And last but not least, will the game be coming to console?
Yes. Again, this is just because it's just me and it's as fast as I can dev things and port things and localize things and do all of that. So right now we have plans. We have a date for Steam release. We have some Switch news soon, maybe?
Soonish.
But we're definitely planning on coming to the Switch. It's just about dates and how fast things can get done. And then, yes, hopefully PlayStation and Xbox. And if anybody's watching from PlayStation and Xbox, if you want to throw us a bone, that would be awesome. And as always, you can wishlist us on Steam as well, which is where we'll be coming up first.
Wonderful. This has been such a great conversation. Is there anything else you want to add or let people know? Any shout outs, whatever, etc.?
Release date for Spellbound is end of July, so it's coming up really, really fast. If you haven't already and you were planning on getting the game, please wishlist us on Steam. It just helps us know that you're waiting for the game. It helps Steam know that you want the game. It pushes us a little bit higher in the analytics. It lets people know that we're coming. Yeah, please wishlist on Steam. Link somewhere down below.
Wonderful. Yeah, and as a quick side note as well, to our community, who we love quite tremendously, and we could not be doing this without, the reason we're able to keep going is because you guys show up and you guys tell us what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what you want. Please keep doing that, because you're funding a two-person company that's very much kind of duct taped together with a bit of WD-40 on the best of days. But we are a company that cares, and we are a company that wants to create for you. So keep doing what you're doing. It's working, and we love you. Honestly, we could not be doing this without any of you. This is amazing. So keep on keeping on.
Stay weird.
Stay weird!